Hi everyone, I want to welcome you today to Royal Legal Solutions presentation about land trust, which is your first line of defense against lawsuits. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Scott Royal Smith, and I am the owner of Royal Legal Solutions, which is a modern law firm serving clients in all 50 states, especially for the real estate investor. Now, when we look at beyond the trust, right? Let's look at beyond the simple use of land trusts and talk about how we can use land trusts in conjunction with other types of asset protection to give us not only information protection, right, anonymity, but also be able to actually protect us from the lawsuits in case they ever get filed. And the way that we do that is we combine the trusts with LLCs to create this bulletproof type of defense. So you can see here inside of the Freedom Temple, the 5 pillars of asset protection show us that now we're talking about not just anonymity, which is the use of the anonymous trust, right, like a land trust, but also the liability protection, because that's the piece that the LLC gives us. And here what we're typically looking for is one trust per asset, and we're also typically looking at one limited liability company or one compartmentalized entity to provide the liability protection, as well as using the attorney-client privilege. So if you're owning an asset, a single asset inside of a land trust, you can own that asset anonymously inside of the trust with the trustee being a nominee trustee, which is an attorney. That trust is in turn owned by an LLC, and that LLC then provides the liability protection. So if anybody looks into who owns this asset, right, they're going to see that it's owned by the name of a trust, and that's attached to an attorney. If they ever ask about any information regarding that trust, the attorney actually can't provide it to them legally because that information is protected by the attorney-client privilege. Now, if there's ever a lawsuit and people sue through the trust, what they find out is that trust is in turn owned by an LLC, so that way there's no liability that they can extend outside of that individual LLC. So the most you can ever lose from the lawsuit, if they ever filed it in the first place, is that single asset. Now, one of the great things that people typically don't know about to further increase their protection is how to have the LLC in turn owned by a trust. So in this scenario, there's actually 2 trusts in one LLC. You have one trust at the very top that owns the LLC, and then the LLC in turn owns the trust at the bottom, and the trust at the bottom in turn owns the asset. What this allows you to do is to be able to own your LLC anonymously, so people don't even know you own that company unless you tell them. And you get to own the asset anonymously through the land trust at the bottom. That trust at the top that owns the LLC, we call that an agent trust. So the agent trust can actually own any type of limited liability company, corporation, etc. And it can be is either listed as a member or a manager of that LLC. And that agent trust, just like the revocable land trust, is also structured in underneath the principles of the common law, so that they're very easily created without any filing fees. And these trusts can own bank accounts if you want to, but in most cases, the actual banking and the bank account is actually held in the name of the LLC, because that's where the true liability protection is there. And when a lot of people are worried about, say, hey, is this going to take a lot of time, money, expense to maintain, and does it complicate my taxes? And the great news is it doesn't do any of that. You're able to monitor and do everything with one bank account, one EIN number, and one tax return for the entire entity stack, like everything together. And the reason why is because revocable trusts and single member LLCs are treated for tax purposes as pass-through entities, so it all flows through to your personal tax return. And then for compliance purposes, the only entity that you really have to maintain year over year is the LLC. So the absolute amount of work and expense that you have to go into being able to have much better protections with the anonymity put in place actually doesn't cost you anything more than you would otherwise have with just a plain old LLC, right? Or just using an individual trust. So just to give you guys a little bit of the broader perspective of how this works if you have multiple properties and you're going to use a strategy where you're going to have multiple LLCs. It's like a typical tree structure that you might be used to. And very technical terms, what this type of structure with the LLCs is actually referred to as a hub and spoke model. So just taking this from the very top, you can see that the agent trust owns the LLC. That's how we're going to be able to own that hub LLC anonymously, because if anybody looks to say, hey, who owns this LLC, it's connected to that trust, that agent trust. That agent trust is further connected to the law firm as a person, and therefore it's protected by the attorney-client privilege. Now, looking a little bit farther down underneath the hub LLCs, you get to see each of the spoke LLCs. So here you can see that it's one spoke LLC, one land trust, and then one property. So that's spoke A, land trust A, and then property A underneath it. So this allows us to be able to protect each asset individually. So if there's ever a lawsuit against a property A, they can't go after property B, C, D, etc., because the lawsuit is compartmentalized to the individual LLC. So if they sued property A, they can only get to the assets that are held by the LLC spoke A, and that's only that single property. So, and if you're ever sued, they can't get to any of the assets, because you want to be like the rich people are, right? Really rich people, they don't own anything at all. Everything they own is actually inside of an entity structure that's anonymously held exactly like this. And just to blow your mind a little bit more about how much more expansive these strategies can get, we looked at everything on today's presentation is everything that's on the right-hand side of the screen, right, regarding the asset holding company. And there you can see the agent trust, the Wyoming LLC hub that's typically used here, as well as the individual LLC spokes, land trust, etc. You can also see how that attaches to a living trust as part of your estate planning underneath item 3 here. You might also notice here on the left-hand side that something we didn't cover today that you should stay tuned for in an upcoming presentation, which is about the operating company and how you can further separate all of your active business operations from your asset holding company, how you can be using retirement accounts to be able to help shelter that income from taxes, and how all of that can roll up to your estate plan underneath your living trust. So that way, when you're done using these assets, that they go to the parties that you care about most, and how you might actually consider, if your net worth is high enough, using offshore entities as your worst case scenario insurance, and you want to move the assets outside of the jurisdiction of the United States. All right, guys, really appreciate your time and attention today. The best thing to do if you're interested inside of land trust is to be in or irrevocable trust or the Delaware statutory trust is to go to ROYALLegalSolutions.com and take the quiz. With that quiz, you're going to be able to make contact and have a productive conversation with our staff on the very first phone call. So thank you so much for providing that information to us, because that allows us to be able to really show you our best side, which is giving you all the information we possibly can up front, so you can make an informed decision on who do you want to partner with and who's going to be able to help you get to financial freedom in the best way. So thank you so much. Again, my name is Scott ROYALl Smith. I'm the CEO of ROYALl Legal Solutions, and I look forward to partnering in business with you.